Is this it? Is this the last chance for the United States men's national team? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video on the channel OTV Football. As you guys can see, I'm in a little bit of a different setup. I will be back in my studio tomorrow for more World Cup content. I hope you guys have been enjoying the most recent World Cup content. Alex and I are beyond grateful and humbled by the support we've been getting on a lot of the videos, and make sure to hit the subscribe button for more World Cup content coming your way all throughout the tournament, prior to the tournament, throughout this month. I know we have a lot of squad selections coming up during the next international break, and of course after the tournament with a lot of analysis. So it's going to be awesome. I'm so excited for this summer. I have high hopes and expectations for this World Cup. I know we've been talking about the ticket prices and all the disastrous policies that have gone around this tournament, but just from a footballing perspective, I hope and pray that this is a fantastic tournament. So everybody is beyond excited for it. I cannot wait. And today we have a very interesting video because I kind of wanted to talk about a topic that I think is very popular in my country residence, which is the United States. And I don't support the U.S. men's national team. I don't dislike them. I kind of indirectly support them. But obviously through my mom's side being Belgian, that's kind of the national team I just picked when I was younger and have supported all my life. So the U.S. men's national team, though, I, of course, follow so many of their narratives, and they're very popularized in the media here. There's kind of been this topic going around, which I was inspired hugely by Get In Football and Jack from Deadball TV. They did a video on this exact topic, so make sure to go subscribe to them. They are fantastic in their analysis. And I kind of wanted to talk about a topic that's been going around of, is this the last chance for the United States men's national team at this World Cup? And I don't think anyone in their right mind thinks the U.S. can actually win the tournaments. But when we talk about last chance, we're really referring to this golden generation that has been established, I'd say, since 2020 during COVID, I'd say, is when this term for this golden generation got kind of coined. And I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about when it comes to, this topic in the U.S. men's national team and our expectations for them at this tournament. So before we get into the video, please make sure to like, subscribe, hit post notifications so you do not miss a video on our World Cup content. We have plenty more coming our way. I'm planning to record hopefully 2 videos with Alex tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. I'm also going to be doing another video on this exact topic, but for Portugal, because I think there's a lot of interesting things to dissect there. And let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Also, I will say another inspiration I did get from this video before we start off is I was watching TikTok Proper Ballers. I don't know if you've seen their TikTok. What might be the best football account on TikTok, to be honest. They do all these retro edits of these kind of niche players. And Asamoah Gyan had one today. I actually met him a few months back, right before the World Cup draw. And everybody remembers the U.S. men's national team's battles with Ghana. I think it was 3 consecutive World Cups, 06, 10, and 14. And Usmnt, what a wonderful player. And, definitely kind of drop some context for this video. Obviously, the U.S. beat Ghana in 2014 after being knocked out by them in the 2 previous World Cups, with a John Brooks last-minute header. It's one of the very first World Cup memories vividly that I remember, being 12 years old or 11 at the time in the 2014 World Cup. But let's get into this topic, though. Is this the U.S. men's national team's last chance? And I think I'm going to echo the sentiment I think Get In Football talked about with Jack from Deadball TV. I don't think this is their last chance to do something big, but I think this is their best chance, and I don't think that's a debate. I think this golden generation of the U.S. men's national team, if we go all the way back to 2020, during the peak era of lockdown, when you had Christian Pulisic playing brilliant for Chelsea, Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams kind of developing into Premier League, solid Premier League players. McKennie's obviously been at Juventus, but he was at Leeds as well. We've seen the establishment of kind of good quality U.S. players. Gio Reyna was at Dortmund. Chris Richards has now developed into the side. Flo Balogun, Tim Weah, obviously Johnny Cardoso now for Atletico Madrid. There's plenty of good talents for the U.S. men's national team. And those who are outside the United States, and, if you're living in Europe or in Africa or in any other continents in the world and not in the United States specifically as a country, I think it's hard to grasp when people talk about this golden generation, because I don't think it's comparable to Belgium or Portugal's golden generation as of recent. I think this is a team that has solid players. I think this is a team that has developed good quality Premier League, Bundesliga, La Liga, Serie A, players that all play in the top five leagues but aren't exactly the stars of their team, apart from maybe Christian Pulisic, who has not scored since December. It's been a tournament that everybody in the U.S. has been looking forward to since the bid they won in 2018. Again, I remember watching the 2018 World Cup. I think it was right after the Egypt-Uruguay game, maybe, one of the opening games, and they had just won the bid for the 2026 World Cup, and everybody was gassed. They were hyped because this is the first World Cup the U.S. has hosted since 1994, and there's now, I think since then, in the following years after they didn't qualify for 2018, I think the golden generation narrative has been pushed by media on these players, even if they don't intend to do that. And I think, unfortunately, that has hindered them a little bit because I don't think these players are close to the level of a real golden generation, which has the capability to win a tournament. Let's kind of dissect this video into a few subcategories. So first, let's look at their group for this tournament. So their group in Group D, Australia, Turkey, and Paraguay. All three of these teams they have played under Mauricio Pochettino. Mauricio Pochettino, I believe, is 14 wins, 9 losses, and 7 draws, something like that. I might be a little bit off on the numbers, but Pochettino has played all three of these teams in recent international windows. He lost to Turkey and beat both Uruguay and Australia. Pochettino, in his tenure as a head coach, and similar to pretty much every head coach from the United States, in recent memory, has failed to beat top European opposition. Yes, you could talk about Jurgen Klinsmann. I believe they beat the Dutch in 2015 in a friendly, but Pochettino has had 4 games and 4 losses to European opposition. Switzerland, Belgium, Portugal, and Turkey all have lost, and they weren't really close matches, to be honest, apart from the Turkey match, which was a 2-1. Looking at this group, beating both Paraguay and Australia, and hosting this tournament with the expectation that the U.S. has around them and the players that they have now, they should be looking not only to advance, but to win this group and get 9 points. No exaggeration. This Turkey team, not particularly impressive, I would say. I think they're a decent team. I think they are a mid-tier level European side. I think they have a similar power level more towards the bottom tier teams in Europe that are at the World Cup. And this would include Bosnia, this would include Sweden, this would include the Czech Republic, this would include, I'd say, Austria maybe in that category as well. Austria might be a little higher, but I would say those 4 teams are similar in power level. This Turkey team also lost 6-0 at home to Spain in qualification. I would argue, and people might get mad when I say this, the Turkish teams that headed into Euro 2020, for example, I thought was my dark horse prior to that. Everybody remembers that Turkish side that, beat France, I believe, twice in qualification and never did anything at the tournament. And I think it was really due to losing the opening match and what that did to them psychologically. But this Turkish team, ironically, has better attacking prowess than that Turkish team of 2020. And maybe better individual players, but I don't know if they're as good of a unit. However, they did play well at the last Euros, so I would not be surprised if Turkey does top this group, but this is a very beatable European team that the U.S. has. Obviously, Kenan Yildiz, Arda Güler, fantastic talents, but the U.S. men's national team should be looking to beat them. Paraguay and Australia. Paraguay is a solid come-to-bowl team. Miguel Almiron, Julio Enciso, players like that have quality, individual quality, several other Premier League players in their side, and are a decent side in come-to-bowl. Once again, I think this is a team, though, that the U.S. men's national team already has beat 2-1 in a recent international friendly, and I think should be looking to beat alongside Australia, who, again, have decent players. Jackson Irvine, Nestorian Irankunda is a great up-and-coming talent who I really like, but they're a very pragmatic side. They do make games difficult, and I won't be surprised if the U.S. gets a draw here. Maybe if Australia shocks them, I wouldn't be too surprised. But the reality is the U.S. should be looking to get 9 points. That is the expectation for this team. When we talk about, is this the last chance for the U.S. men's national team? What does that mean? I think I agree with the sentiment that this is the last chance for the U.S. men's national team to do anything of consequence in a World Cup with this generation. because I think you lose a lot of the players heading into 2030. We just don't know. 4 years, a plethora of things change. Usmnt isn't even being considered for the men's national team anymore. 4 years ago, he was a starter. Gio Reyna, Walker Zimmerman. We do have a large portion of the players here. Balogun wasn't playing for the U.S. in 2022, so who knows what happens in 2030, right? And let alone Copa America 28, again, progression to 2030 is 4 years from now. I think psychologically, too, if they don't perform at their best this tournament, it will hurt them. Let me also kind of reflect on that and change that a little bit. It might not be, yes, their last chance. Like, they could do something in future World Cups, of course, in 2030 with the remnants of this generation. But this is easily their best chance to do something. You will never, I don't know when the next time the U.S. will host a World Cup, let's be honest. And they have such an opportunity at their hand with a group that is so winnable to do something big. And I think the minimum expectation for this team has to be a quarterfinal. People have said, U.S. pundits have said round of 16 is where they should be aiming to get. I think that is disgusting. And people, again, might think that this is controversial, but the U.S. men's national team, there is no way. When are U.S. fans going to stop taking mediocrity when they get bounced in the round of 16 in the last few tournaments or in the group stages? Netherlands in 2022, 2018 didn't qualify, 2014 round of 16, 2010 round of 16, 06 was the groups, I believe, 2002, their only knockout win, getting to a quarterfinal, and with all due respect, that was against Mexico, it wasn't against top European opposition, right? I just have a bone to pick with the narrative that the U.S. should be just aiming to get to a round of 16. When is the U.S., when are fans going to stop accepting mediocrity and saying, no, we need to beat a top quality side? That is the minimum expectation. Maybe it's not even quarterfinal. For me, hosting this World Cup, it is winning a knockout game against the best of the best. I'm talking Spain, France, Argentina, England, Portugal, those types of teams. And you can even put Belgium, Germany. Belgium is the most likely opponent they have in the round of 16. You have to be winning that game. If the U.S. beats Bosnia in the round of 32 or beats Saudi, are people really going to be happy about that result? Oh, they topped their group, but they were eliminated by the first decent team they came up against. I think that's extremely disrespectful. And when you compare this to their CONCACAF counterparts, Canada, arguably also just as talented, if not more, with a lot of injuries right now, looking, I think, also to get to a quarterfinal. Same thing with Mexico, who is the worst generation of Mexican players in my lifetime. And if Mexico is able to get a signature win, if Canada is able to get a signature win at this tournament and beat top quality opposition or get to a quarterfinal, and the U.S. doesn't, was this really ever a golden generation? Or was this fool's gold? Was this just hyped up in 2020 or around 2019, 2020 by winning CONCACAF Nations Leagues, which didn't even exist back in the 2000s during the Dempsey era, and winning a few Gold Cups, that, all of a sudden this team is the best generation, U.S. generation of all time? For me, they're behind already in the 2002. I wouldn't even say they're better than 94. 2014 as well, 2010. Are they even better than those sides? They haven't done anything to prove it. CONCACAF trophies are one thing, yes, but the real measure of success, the broader measures of success are doing something not just in a World Cup, but in a World Cup you are hosting, and you have the best opportunity to do so with the group that you have. Now, what is a disaster for this team? It's anything below second. I could see them getting second with a point differential. I would even give them a little bit of slack, just a tiny bit, if they were to get third and it was like 5-5-5 split, something like that. The top three teams on 5 points and it's head-to-head. If they get third and they're below anybody or below the top two teams or have one win and a draw, I think that is a horrific group stage with the group that you have. Because at the end of the day, I'm sorry, you are hosting this tournament. You have, on paper, a better team than Paraguay, Australia, and some might even say Turkey, and you're going to come to this tournament and get 4 points, and then obviously, let alone if they get knocked out of the group. I mean, that's the biggest embarrassment in U.S. men's national team history, even more than 2018 World Cup non-qualification for me. For me, the expectation has to be a quarterfinal. I think Jack from Dead Ball TV and Get In Football said round of 16, but again, I think that is just so it's just not good enough because you need if the US if this generation wants to establish themselves as the last chance of doing anything notable with this generation in a tournament under Mauricio Pochettino, who they pay £6 million a year, if you're going to get him, if you're going to put a narrative that this generation is the best generation in U.S. men's national team history, they need to be getting a signature win. They need to. It is that simple. And again, this generation narrative might have only been put on them because in 2019 or 2020, they knew they were getting the bid in 26 and then had some player bench warmers in Europe and are like, oh, this is our golden generation. We're going to have our best chance. And this is the World Cup everybody's been looking forward to, right? But at the end of the day, the minimum expectation, I think, U.S. fans, the overachievement for this team is getting to a quarterfinal. And if they do that, I think there's something to be proud of, but nothing less, because you cannot just lose to the first decent team that you play. Now, what I will say, because I don't want to make this video too long, is what are the repercussions, I think, finally, if they were to fail or if they were to do well in this tournament? Well, broadly speaking, this World Cup, I think, will bring a lot more attention to the sport in the U.S., regardless of the other factors that are hindering the tournament, like the ticket prices and the profit maxing that FIFA is doing, pretty much. But if the U.S. were to fail, let's start with that. If the U.S. were to fail at this tournament, I think it sets back the U.S. men's national team for a few cycles, to be honest. I think just due to the failure of the Copa America in 2024, the loss of the Gold Cup final last summer, I know with their B team, and now in 2026, and they were to go out in the groups, the Pochettino era obviously is a failure. And he's gone regardless after this tournament, no doubt in my mind. But at the same time, what would be the mentality heading into 2028 from pundits, from players, into the Copa America 2028 or into World Cup, let alone World Cup 2030? Oh, well, yeah, we just wasted our biggest chance ever of doing something at a World Cup because we were hosting it. We're never going to get that chance again for the next, 16 years. Who knows the state of football at the time between other nations, let alone the United States, what's going to happen there. People are talking about World Cup expansion, everything. Who knows what's going to happen at the end of the day? But I think it would be an absolute disaster. And how would their mentality survive heading into 28 or 2030? They would just be so distraught. I think it would just destroy the mentality of the U.S. group as a whole, right? But I don't want to be too gloomy for this national team because I think there is hope. And I do expect this team, I think, to do all right at this tournament. I think a lot of people are getting very worried because of their recent international friendly results. And that's another thing. I don't want to make this too long, but why is the U.S. men's national team scheduling 4 potential World Cup favorites prior to the tournament? Germany, Belgium, Senegal, and Portugal. You can rank them however you want, but all of those teams there's an argument for all of them to be within the top 12 teams heading into this tournament. And if you get smacked by all of them heading into the tournament, what is that going to do for your confidence? Pulisic's holding his arm like this in the press conferences after the game, acting like, oh, it's all going to be okay. Clearly he's not. He hasn't scored since December. So how is that going to help your mentality if you're getting smacked? Now, again, also looking back at the Uruguay result, for example, which is supposedly Pochettino's signature win, the 5-1, I don't think it's a signature win anymore. I don't think there's any argument you could make for that to be a signature win. The main narrative now is, the reality is, since Poch can't beat, the U.S. can't beat top European opposition with most of their players back, is a U.S. B team is better than a Uruguay B team. It's that simple. That's all that happened because this is a poor Uruguay generation. Let's be honest. They have some decent players, and their B team was not able to do anything against the U.S. B team away, and that's all that happened. It wasn't people overreacted at that result. Even I was very concerned for Uruguay after that result, and then I saw Uruguay play against England, and with Valverde back and Núñez back, and I'm like, okay, this team is a lot better than that B team that they played against the U.S. I still don't think they're a good team, a great side under Bielsa at all. At the end of the day, I think the narrative then flips on its head because we saw what the U.S. did with their best players, missing a few, as did these other teams. So you just had a bunch of A-minus team games between Belgium and Portugal, and they got smacked in both. So the reality is there is obviously worry for the U.S. ahead of this World Cup. But I will say this. In 2022, they got destroyed by Japan prior to the World Cup under Berhalter, and everyone was worried, and they did all right. This time they are hosting, and a tournament tells all, and a tournament is way different than the friendlies. I think you can pick up little narratives in the friendlies, but it never tells the full picture. And the reality is when the U.S. enters this tournament, I think they're going to play better than expectations. And this generation's success or their last chance will hinder on if they can beat a top side. If they are able to do that and progress to a quarterfinal, or if even if they're to play Argentina in the round of 16 and get knocked out, I'm sorry, it's just not good enough. It's not good enough. Everyone's going to be like, you're crazy. Argentina are a fantastic side. They're a top 3 favorite, whatever. I do not care. I do not care because you lost the first decent team that you played. You beat a couple of mediocre teams in the group stages and won in the round of 32. You get knocked out by the better side. You have to be getting a result. It is that simple and progressing to a quarterfinal if you are the best generation in U.S. men's history and are hosting the tournament. It is that simple. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this very controversial topic. Obviously a lot of people talk about the MLS players, the Euro snobs, everything. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe, hit post notifications so you do not miss any more World Cup content. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.